How many know this is the biggest basketball clinic in Canada? How many know that? Fantastic. And I think it's 3 years running? Fantastic. It's also the biggest sport clinic in Manitoba as well, so beating all the other sport clinics. So how about a hand for Adam, Darcy, Dan, and Ian, who did a fabulous job, okay? I had a talk with Baseball Manitoba this morning, and they said, you're going to present at this clinic? I said, how could we get that many coaches? We can't possibly. So it's fantastic. Coaching Manitoba, the DVD that you receive in the package today, one of the requirements to get that DVD was because we gave such a good price, I had to be able to speak. So that's why I'm here, is because it was a good price on that DVD. What that's done is what we wanted to do in Coaching Manitoba was put resources in coaches' hands. We want you to have resources. I've recently have done some officiating. I was at Mennonite Brethren and saw the grade 9 boys, Mennonite Brethren, do our dynamic warm-up from our DVD number 1. That was fantastic. That's what we wanted. DVD number 1 was getting a dynamic warm-up, getting that ladder skills for agility and for speed, and then also some core strength. This one that you got today is about speed and strength. All vetted by Sport Med Council, so all vetted by doctors, chiropractors, by physicians that have gone through the exercises. They're good. And Dean Creeler is highlighted at the College of Physicians. So it's really a good DVD with speed and strength appropriate for the age. And that's what we tried to put out, was age-appropriate training. Why? Because we want it to be relevant to long-term athlete development. Great to hear what Kirby was saying about completing, having an all-around basketball player. That's what LTAD is about creating the all-around athlete. So when you're saying about footwork, how important it is, I remember Mo Elwanibi is one of my coaching clinics. He played in the NFL, he played line for the Bombers, and his drill for all the coaches was this. That was it. That was his drill. He said, if you can do that really well and be 300 pounds, you can play in the NFL. All right, that's the footwork it requires. So then he went from there. The bottom line is it's those early important skills at an early age and continuing on. Great to hear also Kirby talk about playing with your back to the basket. I coached between 1976, I started coaching basketball, till 2003. And I realized maybe I should get out of that game, but bottom line was, I had my post player play with his back to the basket, and I was watching one of the college games, and they said the worst thing you could do as a coach was put your big guy in junior high with the back to the basket. And I thought, oh, that's why I'm having success. Maybe I better change that. So luckily we changed that. But the bottom line, it is those basics. Long-term athlete development has to do with your basic premise. With Sport Canada has got LTAD as the pathway for athletes, the pathway for athletic development. CS for Life, Canadian Sport for Life, is the website. All their material is on CS for Life. So all their developmental, for parents, for coaches, for athletes, it's on that website. So CS for Life is it, and they promote the LTAB pathway. All right? It talks about the multi-sport athlete. Okay, I know you can't see the picture here. We have a pretty good example. Her name is Cindy Clausen. We have in Manitoba the 2 best multi-sport athletes in the country ever. Clara Hughes and Cindy Clausen. Both hold the record for the number of gold medals, 6 at Olympics. Cindy got 5 in Torino. She's still skating with the national speed skating team. Speed skating was not her first sport. She was a AAA Sharks defenseman. That's what she was. Until 1998, when she went and tried out. She was actually in 97. She was voted on the junior Canadian. She was voted the #1 defenseman in the world at the World Championship for juniors. She went and tried out for the Olympic team in 98 and got cut. She had just finished MBCI high school. She had played volleyball, basketball. She'd played soccer at an early age. She'd played baseball at an early age, but hockey was her sport. She went to Calgary, got cut. A friend of hers said, why don't you pick up speed skating? She's the most decorated Olympian, along with Clara Hughes, ever. She didn't try speed skating until she was in university. Most of our sports are late development sports. So that's what they're saying is long-term athlete development. What are you thinking about? When I was coaching the early years, I wasn't concerned about long-term athlete development. I was concerned about winning. I had a championship to win in grade 8 and grade 9, and I wanted to win a championship. And how could I do it? Well, I did it because I had a great zone press. Okay, a zone press is not really good for teaching athletic skills to individuals. All right? Really not a good thing. I did it because I put the back to the basket of a player. It's not the best way to teach your best player. You want them handling the ball. They may be a point guard at 6'7", not a post player. So again, it's that athletic development at an early age. That's what's really, really important. All right? The other reason for long-term athlete development is because, number one, our health costs are insurmountable. Our health costs are growing. The rise of obesity in the population, health is a concern now, and it'll be a bigger concern in the future. If we can get everyone participating in athletics at an earlier age, if we can get sport development at every age, at an earlier age, and continuing, we will have a better health system. You are part right now of the health system because you coach. You help individuals exercise and develop a lifelong love of sport. The coach is the most important person in the sporting environment beside the parent. It's the coach. It's you people. You take your time, you volunteer that time for your athletes. And because of that, people continue to coach. People continue to exercise. We've probably still got people playing a number of our leagues later in life. They're still active for life. That's one of the LTAT principles, active for life. That's what we'd like to see. But it first starts at the young age when they get turned on to sport by that first coach that acts like Kirby Shep and says, way to go out there. Way to go out there. Continually praising that kid to continue playing. That's the most important person in the sporting environment. You make a difference. So you should be applauded. Because of that, our health system could get stronger. And that's what you do. So thank you. Okay. Now, as far as LTAD, all right, we've got very important premises. If I get stronger in the fundamental movement skills, if my fundamental movement skills are stronger, I'm likely more apt to actually participate in sporting environment. So those fundamental movement skills are important. Hopping, jumping, running, galloping, skipping. Those fundamental movement skills. If I can increase that. So when I'm doing Steve Nash basketball or young WNBA players, I would like them to experience that. So at your practices, you can certainly practice that. Those fundamental movement skills. And they're not just going up and down a line, they're doing diagonal. They're moving with other players. That's really, really important. So fundamental movement skills. What else? ABCs. Agility, balance, coordination. That's what you like to work on. You want to work that on as young as possible. Currently at Sport Manitoba, we've been doing active start workshops with daycares, with early childhood, with 4 and 5-year-olds. And we've been really trying to push to make sure the Early Childhood Center has got some fundamental movement skills, some ABCs in there, some agility, balance, coordination. With Dan Becker and with Adam's support in Basketball Manitoba, we piloted an active start basketball for 4 and 5-year-olds. And we're really pleased to announce that Cole Wedlake, Ross's grandson, scored his first basket in active start basketball. So I think that, that deserves a clap right there, That was a happy day for Grandpa, see that grandson score that first basket, all right? Now, was it all about basketball? No, it was about increasing fundamental movement skills. We used beanbags. We used small balls. We used small targets. Surprisingly enough, the 4 and 5-year-olds, we got great, excellent basketball, but it still wasn't enough. We couldn't lower the hoops any lower than 8 feet, and that didn't help too much. You need a 4-foot hoop almost. So again, you have to adapt, and that's what long-term athlete development talks about, adapting. Okay, we have one of our great sports, currently in lockout, uses the same net in the NHL when they're playing to 5-year-olds. The same net. Okay, that's not really good modification for long-term athlete development. All right? What's basketball done for long-term athlete development? Lots of things. Modified the ball, modified the game, going to 3-on-3. Those are all modifications so kids will learn skill at an early age. All right? Really early age, which is really, really important. Okay, and this is just a Katrina LeMay dome, but again, this is talking what Cindy Clausen could say the same thing. Involved in many sports growing up, each one helping develop physical and psychological skills later when I focused on speed skating. Again, most of our sports are late maturing sports, so that's what we need. It's not an elitist model. Obviously, we want athletes for life. And again, because of our health system. That's the basic schematic. Again, when I was in kinesiology or physical education at that time, it was a pyramid. You started with the base at the bottom and you ended up with the elite at the top. All right? They've realized with health dollars, we'd like to expand. We want everybody in it. All right? And the more success we have at the early age, the better. Coaching athletes on developmental age. So developmental ages. So that's the problem with our teams that you get. You get your 12-year-old team, and you get a 12-year-old this size, and you get a 12-year-old this size. All right? So the developmental age is quite different. What they can do is quite different. So obviously, as a coach, you're constantly adapting. What was Kirby saying in the drill? If you need to do this, if you need younger players, bring the passing lane in. It's always adapting. What can they do? What can they have success with? So it's very important. The relative age, again, the stats are out there with Malcolm Gladwell. If you're born in the first 6 months of the year, you're more apt to play in the NHL. 70% of NHLers play in the first 6 months. Why? Because those kids are picked early. January, February, March, April, May birthdays are picked. Okay, on the young teams. And if they're picked on the young teams at the Super Sevens, they're picked at the Mighty Mites at the grade 8 or age 8, and then they go on to their play to AA first, AAA, etc. So again, they have a head start. In the States, it's that September birthday. In Europe, the same thing. So whatever one, those relative age really count. Okay, training programs designed on biological markers. When I was teaching physical education, I had a parent come to me and say, my kindergarten child, my 5-year-old, scored 60 goals last year in hockey, is the #1 hockey player in the city. He does 25 push-ups every night and 25 sit-ups every night. And I was like, wow, that's, I don't even do that. That's pretty impressive. Ridiculous. Okay, you want them having fun at an early age. Did the athlete go on to the NHL? No, he didn't. Sorry. No success story there. The bottom line is fun and biological markers. What's he equipped to do? Okay, from birth, we establish those motor neurons, pathways that are developed. You can develop motor skills at a very early age, just like math skills, music skills, literacy skills. You can develop those physical literacy skills. I taught with a guy who was a badminton guy, and he had his 6-month-old sit on the floor of the rec room with his diapers, and he constructed a badminton bird hanging from a fishing wire, so that it's suspended down, and then he took a smaller racket, adapted the smaller racket so the child could hit the bird, and it would swing and come back. Swing and come back, and he could hit it again, swing and come back. You can develop those motor pathways. They're very easily to develop. All right? So we can do those type of skill development. But do we want to do physical development? Not so much. All right? The sensitive period of accelerated adaptation to training is utilized. Sensitive period. So if we did some speed drills like that right now for everybody in all the coaches here, if we did some speed drills, who would get the most benefit out of speed drills right now? How about these guys in the front row right here? They would benefit from speed drills, fantastic. A lot of us, not so much. Okay? Speed drills, it's kind of... First 20 years, you got that prime time for developing speed. So we should be doing that. We should be developing speed inherent in our running. Okay? I know when I started coaching track and field early age, they said you should actually teach kids to pace. No. Teach kids to run as fast as they can. The faster they run, the better. The more efficient runner they'll become. Our Olympic marathoners, even the Canadian marathoners who placed top 30 in London, average approximately 180 to 200 steps per minute in a 26-mile race. So running 13 miles an hour, they average 180 to 200 steps per minute. That's moving pretty quick, all right? So that's what you'd like to do, is making sure you get that fast cadence at an early age, the biological markers, all right? Then we talk about strength training, and we'll get into specifics. Exclusion to inclusion, meaning we want to include everybody in the program. Each of the 7 stages reflects a different point in an athlete's overall development, promotes a healthy, physical, literate nation where citizens participate. So that's the overall goals, and these are the stages. And you can see it starts off with active start. Active start, fundamentals, learn to train, train to train, train to compete, train to win, and then finally active for life. Each sport is tasked with developing their own. So Basketball Canada has developed their own, but they fit in this generic spectrum. All right? Soccer's program is called long-term player development. I think they wanted to do that to maybe emphasize becoming a soccer player. Really, what LTAD is about creating an athlete. If they get hooked on basketball, fantastic. Great. They'll become a better basketball player. But if they're hooked on athletics, somewhere along the line they will have success. That's the Cindy Clausens. That's the Clara Hughes. Okay, Soccer USA, I'm not sure if in the men's program they've medaled at the Olympics, but there was a soccer player called Galen Rupp who left playing soccer at 14 years old, joined a coach, Alberto Salazar, who actually is one of the top distance running coaches in the world. And this summer, Galen Rupp for the U.S., for the first time since Billy Mills in 1964, got a silver medal at the Olympic Games in the 10,000 meters, not soccer. Okay? Why did Steve Alvette and a number of the great British athletes or great soccer players become great athletes in track and field? Because they had the background. That's what we're talking about, the background. So when we are active start, what are we going to do for our 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds? What's the most important thing? ABCs, agility, balance, coordination. That's the most important. So what we want to do is coaching them is get them doing agility, balance, coordination. So you might pull out some other equipment besides just the basketballs and do something else. Use the lines on the floor. It's great for developing those games. And what are they doing? In soccer right now, they've changed their whole program of youth development. It's now active start, learn to train, or fundamentals, learn to train, and the coaches are actually playing games with them. So you're no longer learning soccer. It's the soccer development is going through a little stage, but it's no longer soccer. It's playing games. And hopefully out of those games, the children will have fun, learn fundamental movement skills, and then from there, be the ones that will actually pick up the soccer ball and have more success. That's the goal. Fundamentals, the golden age of teaching skills. All right? You would like to teach the skill. I feel sorry for our high school guys that came through a program that didn't get the skill, because our high school coaches have to reteach those skills, and those are very, very difficult to do. If they have the basic motor pathways already and they have the fundamental skills, then you can build on that base. You can improve on the base. But if those skills are off, then suddenly you have a problem. And I know as coaches you've experienced that, trying to reteach a skill that hasn't been done correctly. So again, the fundamental time is the golden age of teaching skills. Why is it the golden age? Because growth is pretty steady. Through the elementary schools, growth is pretty steady. So you can teach those skills. They've got a basic foundation. All right? When I first started teaching physical education, the high school guys told me, don't teach cross-country skiing and don't teach racket sports to the kids. Leave that for high school. Leave that until they're 15, 16 years old. No. Teach those skills early. The early skill development, the better. Both hands. Okay, I was at the SAGE conference with the Manitoba phys ed teachers. We did a session on throwing and games of the purpose. We had a baseball guy in, and we were throwing opposite hand. He could throw opposite as well as he could throw his dominant hand. All right, because he'd learned both hand throwing. Okay, same with soccer. Obviously, both feet for kicking. So again, you want to learn those skills, and when are they learned? At an earlier age. The earlier, the better. So that's what you like to do. Okay, once we move out of the fundamentals, the active start, now the training can take place. So if I'm 5 and 6 years old, don't waste your time on push-ups and sit-ups. Don't do that. Have some fun. Play some games. Do those other types of activities that will develop it, but you don't have to do push-ups and sit-ups. Learning to train, that's when we start getting into the training mechanisms. What are you going to do with the 9 to 12-year-olds? All right, learn to train tonight. Learn to train is all about speed development. There's a window to develop that speed. That's the time to do it. Develop the speed. All right? You can do core strength, you can do body weight exercises, but it's speed development is prime. Is there a time for aerobic development? Yeah. You can go out and do multi-sport activities. You can go out and actually increase. But again, you don't want to have them do too much of that long, slow running or long, slow biking or too much aerobic development, because we would like to emphasize speed. The more efficient we can become, the better athlete we're going to become. I don't think anybody here, any coach that says, sorry, you're too fast, you can't make my team. Not said, you know. Like, speed is a key, so that's the time to do it. As you start moving to the train to train, okay, we're talking 12 to 15, we're talking 11 to 16, that age group. Suddenly we're talking about now using more body weight activities. We're actually moving into the training phase. All with this is lots of activities and lots of multi-sport activities, not just one sport. I'm often speaking to hockey people and I'm saying the wrong thing to do is start at 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds and go hockey right through. That's the wrong thing to do. All that's happening, and they've proved it in the States with baseball, is you're having more and more surgeries, Tommy John surgery that you didn't see until they were 23 and 24 years old. Now they're happening at 16, 17 because kids are overuse injuries at a young age. Whether it's club volleyball, whether it's hockey, whether it's too much basketball, it's overuse of those same muscles when the body is not prepared for it. So how do you prepare the body for it? By multi-sport activities and by training sensibly, getting that recovery periods in. So again, that's built into the train to train when you want to have recovery periods built in with the exercise periods. All right, it's very, very important. The other things about, obviously the technique we said was really important. The golden age is really important. And then obviously the most important thing for stamina, for strength, for speed, for suppleness or flexibility and skill is that learn to train, train to train. By the time we get into that, then we can start doing in the train to compete and train to win, we can start putting our systems in. Too many coaches start putting systems in too early because systems work. Like I say, I was successful because I used a 2-2-1 zone press. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. It didn't help my athletes. Okay, it helped my win-loss record. It wasn't great for those athletes. I put people in positions that we would succeed. It's not a great way to develop athletic ability. All right? So what you do, you find out what happens. And the same with coaches are pretty good at putting in systems. So again, the type of zone defenses that are, shouldn't be played until later. And why? Because you want the preface of individual skill development. Get the individual skill, get the athlete better, and you will have a better team. But it's long term. It's not going to help right now. In the case of Cindy Clausen and Clara Hughes, they had myriads of coaches. They probably had 30 or 40 coaches helping them all the way along in their athletic career. That's what you will be doing. You're part of the health system. You're doing a fabulous job, but those athletes will move on. They move on, and hopefully they'll move on to bigger and better. That's what the goal is. If you can give them the right capacity or the right skills at an early age to move on, that's your job. You've done a fantastic job, and you should celebrate that because that will help along the athlete along the way. All right? That's really important. Okay, again, with all these, when we finally end up for train to win and obviously enjoy the love of game, we've got that active for life. And that's where we have, like I say, the adult basketball leagues where guys are still playing today. We're making sure that that's happening. All right? Is there anybody has questions on long-term athlete development? Because I think, what's that? Oh, yeah. Oh, you got the two. I didn't realize there was a countdown here. That's pretty impressive. 2:45. 2 minutes for questions. Any questions about LTAD? How many have heard of LTAD? Okay, so quite a knowledgeable crowd. Fantastic. How many believe in it? Okay, I think that's good. How many think that no, we got to start earlier and younger and start playing that game earlier and go for it? And that's quite honestly, a lot of parents have those dreams. We heard a really good speaker at Sport Manitoba on Monday. She was a Canadian, is a Canadian. She got her training in kinesiology and nutrition from Victoria, and now she worked this past summer with the U.S. Olympic team. And she had all the raw U.S. stuff. But she went over the importance of nutrition. But not just that. She said why the U.S. does so well. And the number one thing is because it costs $30,000 to go to university in the States. $30,000. So parents in the States are going, get a scholarship or you're not going to school. That's what they're saying. And so those kids are out there working and working to get that scholarship. All right? In here, Our education is not $30,000. It's much cheaper. And if you get those 90 averages, you can probably get about $1,500 to $2,000 at university and pay half your tuition. So you might be better off to do that. All right? So again, you can see the emphasis is, if that emphasis on that one goal at the end, you can see how training earlier will be down. But the bottom line is, the more multi-sport experiences, the more you can train at an early age for a variety of sports, the more physical motor development you'll have. Physical literacy at an early age.
Interesting how he mentioned my grandson, because my grandson just turned 5 now, and this isn't, I'll get to what I'm going to talk about in a moment. I still have 29 seconds of his time. My grandson just turned 5, and my daughter has had him do some soccer and this early active start program with basketball. And what a difference there is in the two. Now, obviously, I'm biased in terms of the sport that I love and have been involved in most of my life. But when I went to watch them play soccer in the Timbit soccer, I'm not saying there was anything wrong with it, but what they were trying to do basically is teach these 4- and 5-year-old kids to play soccer. And there's no way are they ready to play soccer. First of all, they don't have any kinds of athletic skills. And second of all, they're more interested in what the snack is going to be when it's finished. And yet they're out there with best intentions trying to teach them to play soccer. And then when I go to watch the active start program in the basketball, again being biased, but how superior it was, because there was some basketball for sure. And Cole did actually put the ball in the hoop once. You know what I mean? In the last session, by the way, if I remember correctly. But you know, just the fact that what the emphasis was, and the majority of the time was on just playing and jumping and running and balance. And take my word for it, he is my grandson. He got the uncoordinated, clumsy gene that I have passed on. You know what I mean? So he needs it. Like, he definitely needs it. And so it was a real pleasure to see that kind of stuff happening. And I remember being here 2 years ago and speaking on behalf of the technical committee and relative to LTAD about the whole question how one of the problems in basketball is too much competition and not enough training. And that's still a problem in our game. And we did a survey that year, if any of you were here at that time. And we collated all the results and basically found that on the average it's a 1-to-1 ratio. That for on most levels, it's like one practice for every game. Now some of us, and I know, are limited by facilities. And we would love to practice more. But in other cases, it may not be just a facility issue. We know that it's easier to coach in a game than it is in a practice. I could coach a game. I just have to stand over here at the bench and yell at the people on the bench and yell at the people on the floor and make it look like I know what I'm doing. In a practice, though, I have to have a plan. And that makes it harder. You got to teach. Now, getting on to the topic that we're supposed to talk about today is this Empower Plus. Now, some of you have been involved in workshops run by the National Coaching Certification Program of Canada through Coaching Association of Canada. And the Empower Plus, first of all, if you've ever taken the Introduction to Competition A, there is a part of that workshop is make ethical decisions. And it's always, I do some of those workshops, and it's always the best one to do because there's a lot of very good discussion. Well, somebody decided to take this one step further. And it was originally called Advanced Make Ethical Decisions. But that sounded like you had to be smart to take it, and if you did, I'd never be there. So what they've changed it now, and it's become Empower Plus, creating positive and healthy sport experiences. Now, Sheldon talks about LTAD and says, we want sport for life. We want kids, like I'll pick on this kid. He happens to, I don't even know your name. I'm sorry, what's your name? David, how old are you? He's 15. Now, he likes to play basketball. He wouldn't be sitting here today and doing what he's doing today if he doesn't like to play. We want David playing when he's 45. We want David being active when he's 50. Okay, so the obvious question to ask is, how do we do that? Ask that question. Thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. And there's no simple answer, but the best way of doing it, and I think David and all of these young men would agree, the best way of doing it is to make sure that they have a positive experience. Like, obviously he likes playing basketball because he gets something out of it, right? We don't have to get into what exactly, but what happens in the experiences he has and these other guys have is positive and makes them want to come back. And let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, we are a big factor in that. Whether David and anybody else, if I'm the coach of this team, how many are there in this row here, whatever, let's say there's 12 people. If we have a practice today and all 12 are there, and the next day we have another practice and 6 are there, there's a message to me. And maybe the message is, hey, maybe I got to start looking in the mirror a bit and got to start thinking about what I'm doing with some of these people. Because kids will vote with their feet, as we say. And that's what we want. Ultimately, I think that's what we all want as coaches. If the practice is over and we come together and we put our hands together and do whatever and say whatever we're going to do and, practice the secret handshake or whatever it might be, we want them to leave thinking what? That was great. I can hardly wait till the next practice. When is the next one? I want to get at it right now. So how do we do that? We create a positive and healthy environment out here for the athletes we're working with. Now you might say, well, that's pretty obvious. We all do that. Take my word for it, we all don't. We all don't. And we've got to start looking at ourselves very critically. The term that often comes out through this workshop is to coach yourself. Like, I'm very good at coaching others. You didn't do this right, David. Come on, you got to do that better. You should have done this better. You got to work harder. You got to do this better. Hey, I'm really good at that. But when it comes to coaching myself, I may not be as good as I think I am. And by what I mean by coaching myself is I have to look at myself critically in terms of what I am doing and how I am treating the athletes that I'm working with. So there's a lot, he used the term too, a paradigm shift. This is a very major paradigm shift for some of us as coaches. Coaching is much like parenting. We parent often as we were parented. And a lot of us will coach as we were coached when we played, if we did, like many of us did. And that may not be the best thing. Like, we used to live in caves. Now we live in houses. It's called progress. Right? Things change sometimes. They don't always have to stay the same. And there are coaches out there, maybe even in this room, and I'll be the first to admit that it's happened to me at times too, where I have said and done things to some of the athletes that I have been working with that really is maltreatment. How many of us use physical penalties when we don't like what has happened? You guys aren't working hard enough. Come on, this isn't good enough. Get on the end line and run 58 laps or something. Come on, you dirty adolescent creeps, you. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, we're very good at that, some of us. And we think that's what coaching is. We think that's what's going to get the best out of kids. Now maybe, I don't know, David, maybe for him, I can yell and take a strip off him, and it's like water off a duck's back. But the guy next to him, name? Kieran, very different. Maybe he's someone who he goes home and, the coach was just on me, like whatever. Now I was on Kieran because I'm trying to make Kieran as good a player as I can make him. But maybe that's not the best way. We want Kieran and all the rest of them to have a positive experience. They do in this course, this workshop, they divide coaches into 3 categories. They talk about the predator coach. We're not even going to talk about, those are the ones who end up their picture in the paper. We don't even want to talk about that stuff today. Okay, that's not nice. Then there's the expressive coach. This is the coach who loses it, who has very poor emotional control. Not only in practices, but sometimes in games. And this is a form of maltreatment at times. Yelling at an athlete out of anger and frustration. We think that's the way to deal with it when, things aren't going the way we want them to go. And there's some of us around. We're around. Then there's what they refer to as the instrumental coach. This is the well-intentioned, caring, committed person who's not aware of really what negative impact he or she might be having on athletes. We do this to try to get an achieve. We think we're going to get the best out of kids if we get on them sometimes. And there are times maybe we have to. But we got to start looking at how we are dealing with the athletes that we're working with. Sometimes this is a lack of knowledge of alternatives or just an acceptance of it. Like, let's say David's here, and let's say you're David's mother. I don't think that's true, but let's say you are. Okay? And she hears me, David, there are people who will, David's mother might even say, that's the way coaching is. I want him to get after my son because we want him to be as good a player as he can be. So some of these actions are even accepted in our society, where we got to start as coaches looking at ourselves critically, as we said, to look in the mirror and have a talk with that person in the mirror and start asking ourselves the tough questions and reevaluating it. I know, and I've got this camera on me now. Hi, Mom. I used to, every year when I was coaching high school, have the managers videotape at least 2 or 3 practices during the year. Now, the players always thought I was doing it so I could watch the players, and that would give me more reason to not play them or something. Whatever. I did it mainly to watch me after. And I'll be honest with you here, ladies and gentlemen, there were a few times I didn't like what I saw on there. I didn't like what I saw. Gee, look at me out there. Like I thought I was intense, and I was. And this was important to me. And that's great. We want people to have intensity and take what they're doing as being important. But there were times, as I said, I didn't like myself too much. And it made me start thinking about a lot of this kind of stuff. And hopefully it can you too. Some of the things they ask in the workshop is they have some questions. And there's 8 of them that I listed. And it says, do my words or actions make the athlete feel good about him or herself? Do my words or actions enhance the athlete's enjoyment of sport? Are my actions respectful of others? Do my actions place the athlete in a position of unnecessary risk? How are my words interpreted? What messages am I providing or sending in my words or actions? Are my actions equitable? Are my actions ethical? Have I exercised self-control in my behaviors? And those are good questions for us as coaches to think about once in a while and discuss. Like Kirby, I caught the end of his session, and the best thing he said was, of course, that we don't talk enough about this stuff. And before we end, remind me, I'm going to do a little commercial. Okay, so you're in charge. Okay? Because we don't spend enough time talking to each other, and these would be good things for us to talk about. Now, I'm not saying we all have to kind of hold hands throughout the whole practice and sing Kumbaya and go home. You know what I mean? We're going to work hard. For sure we're going to work hard. And we as coaches want the athletes we're working with to improve their skills and to reach their so-called potential like everybody else. The question is, what's the best way of getting there? And do we sometimes cross a line thinking that, I think I'm doing the right thing, but I may not be in terms of what I say and what I do? And this is a huge paradigm shift for us as coaches when we talk about paradigms. Like forced physical exertion has been inbred in the sport culture. Like in some sports more than others. But it's there. Like, we're going to make them work hard. We're going to punish them if they don't do what we want them to do or do something at a level that we're comfortable with. And we've got to start looking at that. A lot of that, I believe, comes from the military. You know, these boot camp mentality that we have out there now. Like, I've never gone to one, and I wouldn't want to go to one. I see them sign up for the boot camp. Ooh, I don't want to do that. It sounds scary. Like, what are they going to do to me there? Like, but we have this kind of no pain, no gain kind of mentality. It's garbage, and we got to start looking at some of that stuff. And it's, as I said, it's often good people with good intentions who are doing this. They're working hard, but unintentionally, they're really maltreating athletes. And the ultimate thing that happens is, kids, David may not end up playing till he's 45. How many kids do you know, and I know them too, in basketball, whether they were good players or not, who just decided one year, that's enough, I'm done. And they don't play anymore. Now, I'm not saying it's all because of this, but that could be a factor. We need to start, as I said, looking at that. And a lot of our reactions would be things like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. I would never do anything like that. I believe it's a problem, but I'm not that type of coach. And maybe you aren't. If you aren't, great. But as I said, I saw myself at times, and I didn't like what I saw. Not all the time, but there were times. And you know what I really ended up concluding from a lot of those times is I was getting mad because they weren't doing what I expected to happen. But when I really sat and thought about it, I may have been asking them to do something that they weren't capable of doing. That's one of the problems with a clinic like this. And please, it's great, and I'm wonderful that we have this. But we bring in people, and we should bring them in, who are maybe working with pro players and working with university players. Now, how many of you here are working with pros and university players? If you are, good for you. You might be making a few bucks. But I don't think too many of us are. And we write this stuff down, and it looks good, and it is good. And then we run back to our own circumstance, and we say, okay, I was at this thing on Friday, and you should see what they did. And then when we do it with our kids, it just doesn't seem as good. And we yell at them, come on, it worked on Friday. What's wrong with you guys? Get on the end line. And maybe it's my problem. I'm asking them to do something they can't do. Or B, maybe I haven't taught them the kinds of skills and explained what it is that I want them to do well enough that they're able to meet whatever expectations that I have. So as I said, I really think we got to start thinking about this, and that's what this workshop called Empower Plus is all about. It's not trying to point fingers and say, we caught you, and we're going to kick you out of the coaching fraternity. It's all about self-reflection and getting us to think about what we are doing and whether what we're doing is appropriate. And to be critical of ourselves, because that's how we learn. There's an old expression in sport that feedback is the breakfast of champions. And one of the problems with coaching is we don't get a lot of feedback. We go and do our thing with the kids that we're working with, and seldom do we have anybody giving us any kind of, constructive criticism. And I don't have a simple solution to that. That's why it's often good to have an assistant. And a lot of the workshop is also devoted to, if you, may not be you, but maybe you're working with someone or see someone who is dealing with people in ways that might be considered to be maltreatment. How do you deal with that? Having the difficult conversations. The worst thing I can do is go up to a coach and say, you shouldn't be doing that. And then, that's not going to help, because he or she's going to get his back up right away. So how do I maybe broach that subject with someone? How do I, have that difficult conversation? What resources are there? And there are ways that you can notify and you can refer and all this, and there's a process you go through in the workshop that gives you some ideas in that area. So this isn't necessarily a commercial, because it's not offered all that often, but it's a way of maybe getting us to think a little bit about this stuff. And it's important to come to clinics like this and watch the technical parts of sport and get ideas maybe of drills or ways to teach this and ways to teach that. And that's great. And we should always want to be as knowledgeable as we can in that area. But let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all agree with me that if we're hoping to produce, like if I'm the coach of this team, and my expectation is that all of them are going to sign lucrative NBA contracts and multi-million-dollar contracts that are going to maybe shoot some of that back to the old coach, eventually, like I think I'm pretty naive. So what are we trying to produce here? We're trying to produce better human beings, better citizens, better sons and daughters, better husbands and wives. And I think we have an influence on that, because I don't have to talk to you about all the different roles that coaches play. Like, we do lots of different things other than just teach kids maybe how to play basketball. Our actions become, like we're the role model thing and all that kind of stuff. Hey, that's so important. And we need to start looking, as we said, critically at how we're handling ourselves, not only with the athletes we're working at, but in coaching generally. And that's, I think, what the workshop is all about. Would you agree, Mr. Reynolds? Sheldon and I were lucky enough to take part in a kind of a training session in this, and it was interesting to hear it, and it made me think even more about some of this kind of stuff. So I'm glad that people are starting to talk not just about the technical part of the sport, and that's why I encouraged Adam to include these two, and because we have a somewhat of a relationship, I told him I'd punch him on the nose if he didn't. That's why he included these two sessions at the end, because we want you to think about more than just, what kind of press am I going to run, or how do I teach post play. And that's great. We need to know that stuff. But there's a lot more to coaching than just the technical part of the game. And I think we all know that, but sometimes we need to be reminded. Now, what were you going to remind me of? That's right. I'm going to give you a commercial. This is part 2 now. Kirby mentioned, was a good segue into it, that we don't get together and do, like, this is good here. But the problem is, now part of it is me, that my eyes are bad. There are people at the back, I can't even see who they are. I don't even know who they are. We're too spread out here. And I know why, because there's large numbers and we need the facility and all that, and that's great. Well, we are going to organize, through the Board of Basketball Manitoba, the technical committee, at least 4 coaching seminars in early November. Now, they're going to take part, I think, it'll be on the web and you'll see it exactly, but I think it's going to be at Sargent Park School. Now, not at Sargent Park School, the gym you may have been in, but the elementary school gym. And it's about the size of maybe a half court, and the walls are right here. Now, the reason that that's a good place to do that is it's very intimate. And we're going to pick 4 topics, and we're going to have an experienced coach who is going to present for a few minutes. It'll be in the evenings, and it's going to be on a different day of the week every time. So that you can't say, well, Mondays are always bad for me. And whoever can come, can come. And it's going to be informal, and we want basically just to discuss basketball and give people the opportunity to ask specific questions. And they will be on specific topics. Like, one will be on individual defense. What is the way that we have to teach kids how to guard somebody? And the different things we can do to teach that. Others, well, maybe we would do a session on maybe half-court offense, and what are the concepts and things we want to teach in that. So we're going to organize these, and we'll see. I don't know how many will come. Maybe lots, maybe few, but we're going to try all 4 of them, and it'll be on the web, as I said, in the next week and a half, and we hope that you will come. They'll be from about 6:30 to about 8 o'clock at night. It won't be late. It'll be a fairly short, as I said, and we're going to call them seminars for that reason, because we want people to be involved. We don't want people just sitting. We'd like you to be on the floor and talking and, giving ideas and sharing ideas. And we think that's important because we don't do that enough. Like when I was young, and that's long ago, it was much more common. But now people are very busy and all this is happening and we don't get together enough. So I won't wish you good luck, because luck has nothing to do with it. Luck is not a game plan. But I hope that, not only based on what you have going to get out of the other sessions today and tomorrow, but you'll have a great season, you'll enjoy it, and you will do all you can to make sure that the people you are working with, everybody smile here now. Right, look at this. I have a positive and healthy experience in what they are doing under your leadership. So thank you very much.